Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. And today I'm going to be doing my 2024 presidential election map based on a demographic model. Make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, make sure to go ahead and follow the Twitter and join the Discord in the description down below. And so pretty much what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using this 538 model, which basically includes all categories such as age, education, sex, income, race, and even shifting all voters. You can kind of play around with the turnout too, which we're also going to play around with that as well. And so these are the results from the 2020 election according to the model. And I'm going to be shifting all of the demographics to where I think they're going to vote alongside in 2024. We can see all of the margins for every single individual state here. Biden is doing extremely well. Obviously he did pretty decent in the 2020 presidential election. In some of these democratic states, however, there is some work to be done. Even Nebraska's second for whatever reason is within a lean margin here. I don't know why. Wisconsin is right around here. Like, most of the margins seem pretty right, but I guess since they redistricted Nebraska second, that's probably why it does look a little bit more Republican now. So maybe it is more likely he ends up taking it. But either way, we're going to be end up playing with this. So the first demographic you actually see here is the 18 to 29-year-old category. I actually think this is going to get way closer. I think it's going to get down to like a 12-point victory for Biden. I don't think Trump is going to flip it completely, and I don't even think he's going to get within single digits of flipping the category, but I think he is in fact going to make huge gains with this voting demographic. I think with 30 to 44-year-old voters, he will make gains with them, but not as much as the younger demographic, because these are a little bit more liberal type of adults. They're a little bit more from, millennials, early 2000s, sort of kind of growing up in that time. And so you kind of see those people tend to lean a little bit more left with some kind of blue dog type views. 45 to 64, I actually think may shift to the right by just a couple points, and that ties the national environment. 65 plus voters, I do actually think are going to get significantly closer. I do think it actually shifts the election a little bit. I think it only ends up being maybe even R+5, I'd actually say, and that kind of gives Biden an advantage in the popular vote. Now, what's quite interesting, I think that turnout with young voters is going to be down pretty significantly, which is going to kind of mess up the turnout there. I think with this demographic, 30 to 44-year-old voters, the turnout's going to be down as well with this kind of vote. However, I think with 65 plus, you're going to see them turn out possibly a little bit more, which doesn't really change the results too much, but it does tie the national popular vote. And with the independent vote, I expect Biden to I expect RFK to probably get around possibly 15% of the young vote. Maybe he gets around, 7%, combining all third parties. Um, there's like a decent amount of vote share that he could potentially get with some of these categories. I even think that he'll get a decent amount of 65 plus, specifically because of the fact that, it is a Kennedy last name, and I think that is going to resonate with a lot of those voters. So independents do combine for about 55% of the vote so far, which does throw off the margins a bit. College educated voters, this category, I do think it'll go down, but I think it's mostly going to end up staying in Biden's column. I think the independent vote share will increase here. I think possibly 8% is looking pretty realistic. That puts Trump winning the popular vote by about 3 points as of right now. Non-college voters, I think Trump's going to do fairly well with this demographic. That already puts Trump winning the electoral college by a pretty decent amount. And with the female vote, I do expect it to get more Democrat in this scenario that flips back New Hampshire. I think RFK will do decent with these voters. I also think he'll do pretty decent with the male vote, and the male vote will probably get a couple more points Republican. That flips New Hampshire back. And if we look at under 30K, I expect this demographic to get a little bit closer, but not flip Republican. 30 to 60, I think will definitely flip Republican. I also think 60 to 100K is going to get a little bit more Republican. That flips states like Virginia, New Hampshire, but I do think the 100K, plus vote, I think is going to get a little bit more Democratic this cycle, just because their policies from the Biden administration, they are benefiting from them because all their assets are theoretically inflating. And so I could actually see that potentially happen. You could even make the case that the 60 to 100K vote possibly even gets a little bit more competitive. You could probably even see that possibly flip Democrat because of that in this scenario, which would put the electoral college at 313 to 225. In terms of the independent vote, I expect RFK to possibly do, pretty good with that demographic, a little bit better with 30 to 60K. But as you go up in third party support, as you go up in the income ladder, I do expect it to get a little bit more less third party. And the last group we have here is race. Asian voters, I think, are going to go down to like D plus 25. I think most of those gains are going to come from Hawaii. I think a lot of the independent party support's going to come here. African Americans, I expect Trump to get around 15% of the black vote, so he'd be winning that category by around 70 points. Biden would at least. And the independent vote share here will be pretty decent. I also think the Hispanic vote will definitely end up getting a little bit closer. I think it goes down to D plus 15 for Biden, which actually flips New Mexico and Minnesota into Trump's column. And the independent vote share there will be pretty decent. The other vote I expect to get a little bit more Republican, but the white vote I actually expected to vote a little bit more to the left, and then you have some independents kind of voting there too. So that actually gives us 318 electoral college votes to Biden's 220. You see, Trump flips all the major swing states plus New Mexico and Nebraska second, but does not flip Minnesota, Illinois, Colorado, Virginia, or New Jersey, states that he's trying to eye in 2024. And you can see some of the margins are a little bit wonky, and you do have third party candidates combining for around 16% of the national popular vote. And so if we were to go over here and start filling out all the margins, we could basically say that all of these states would end up voting, over 10 points Republican at this point in time. Donald Trump won all of these states by a pretty decent amount in 2020, and I wouldn't expect them to vote under 10 points. If we go ahead and find Ohio, it is actually, according to this, it's around a 10-point victory exactly. So it's right above the 10-point threshold. Iowa is also right around here too. It's actually, funny enough, Ohio is actually more Republican than Iowa. Iowa actually votes to the left of Ohio in this scenario, which I think is very interesting that that is the case. And if we look at Alaska, it is, well over a 10-point victory. I think it's just funny seeing Ohio vote to the right of Iowa in this scenario. If we look at some of the more democratic states, California, for example, if we were to pull this up, Vermont, Maryland, and Massachusetts, Hawaii is even a pretty decent victory for Biden. He's actually performing, somewhat well there. It's like an 18-point win. Biden would still do good in some of these states. New York is still a 13-point victory for the incumbent president, which is way lower than 2020, but it's still a victory nonetheless. He's winning Rhode Island by around 14. So he's actually winning Rhode Island by more than he is New York, which is pretty interesting. Connecticut is roughly around the same margin as well. If we look at California, it's around a 15-ish point victory. It's like around 15. Oregon is above a 10-point win for Biden, but Washington is also a pretty decent victory too. So Biden is doing pretty good in some of these Democratic states. If we look for Colorado, Biden's actually winning this by about, it would probably be what, like 6 points there. He's winning it by about 6 percentage points as of right now. Colorado is trending to the right off a cliff, or to the left off a cliff, the past couple of cycles. And even though Trump is winning the popular vote here by around, 2 percentage points, it is still going to trend heavily to the left. If we keep going, we're going to see, the state like Illinois, for example, which, if I can find it, it's less than 10. So it is a little bit competitive. It's around a 7-point victory for Biden. However, or like it's like around an 8-point win. New Jersey's actually closer than Illinois, which is interesting, but it is not, a necessarily super competitive state. Delaware is actually above a 10-point victory. And if we look for South Carolina, which should be over here, Donald Trump's winning that by basically 15 points. So that's in the safe category as of right now. Maine second is actually right under the 10-point threshold. So it's around a 9-point victory, which is pretty interesting. And now, if we look at Trump's, somewhat more likelier states, we'll see that possibly if we look for Florida, let's go ahead and find Florida. It is considered a likely margin. It's almost a 10-point win there, but not quite just yet. If we look for Texas, we can actually see Donald Trump's actually winning Texas very easily here. He's getting around 49% to Biden's 39. So Texas actually votes to the right of Iowa and Florida and Ohio by a pretty significant amount this cycle, which is very interesting to see. You got to understand too, the white vote shifting to the left by a pretty significant amount, according to my analysis, is going to shift Iowa more left than Ohio. Like it's still shifting to the right compared to 2020, but they're going to trend to the left just because Iowa is a pretty majority white state, even compared to Ohio, and it has a way less, dense population and has like half the population that Ohio does. So that is the reason why it would be voting to the left of Ohio in this scenario. If we look for Virginia, Biden's actually winning there by 3.3%. He's actually doing pretty good there. And that's mainly because of the white vote trending significantly to the left. If we look for Maine's first, we'll actually see Biden's winning that by about 12 points. If we look for Maine at large, you can see Biden's actually doing fairly well there. He's actually winning that by around 7 points. So Maine actually trends significantly to the left. So it would be long gone out of his column. New Hampshire even actually votes, right under 5 points. New Hampshire actually votes right below the 5 point threshold. It's literally a 4.8 percentage point win for Biden, which is really interesting. Now, if we go to the first, major swing state, North Carolina, if I can find it over here, I don't know why it's not really popping up here. If we could find North Carolina, Donald Trump is winning the state by around 8 percentage points, around 7, 8 percentage points. So that is a pretty decent victory in the state. If we look at Georgia, Donald Trump is also doing fairly well there. He's actually winning it by a little bit more than North Carolina, which is pretty interesting. Donald Trump getting around 45% there to Biden's 38%. If we look at New Mexico, what's actually pretty interesting is that Donald Trump is winning the state by almost 3 points, and it's actually a lean margin for Trump. This is mainly because Hispanics are trending, ridiculously to the right in this scenario. And the white vote is also shifting a little bit to the left, but even if for New Mexico, the Hispanic vote actually ends up letting the state end up going to the right, which is fairly interesting. If we look for Arizona, Donald Trump is winning that by around 5 percentage points. If we look for the state of Nevada, which should be around here somewhere, Donald Trump is also winning that by a little bit over 5 points as of right now. And we're getting down to some of the other states here. Wisconsin is a 3 point victory for Trump. Donald Trump is poising a 3 point victory, which is only 1 point more Republican than New Mexico. So it seems like New Mexico does trend to the right, this cycle, according to this. Pennsylvania votes by a pretty similar margin. It's around a lean margin for Donald Trump in this scenario. Michigan is actually right above a point margin for Trump. He actually only wins it by 1.1%. And so that means that New Mexico would actually vote to the left of Michigan in this scenario. I think the reason why that'd be the case is because since the white vote's trending left and shifting left, the Rust Belt is going to be a little bit more difficult for Trump to win than in previous elections because there's a little bit more of a white population in the Rust Belt, especially in a place like Wisconsin. And so it is going to be a little bit of a challenge for Donald Trump to win the Rust Belt states, but he still wins them by a bigger margin than he's ever even won them by. And if we look at the state of Minnesota, we can see Biden's actually winning there by a little bit over 3 points. So he's doing pretty well there. And Nebraska's second is a tied, almost tied. It's a tilt margin for Trump. So according to the demographic model, this is what we would get in 2024. As of right now, Donald Trump would sweep the Sun Belt. Like it wouldn't even be a problem. And he'd already be winning New Mexico. Um, even more than a state like Michigan and Pennsylvania. So he wouldn't even need, the Rust Belt. He could literally just win through the Sun Belt, and he would automatically have New Mexico and have Nebraska second in his column. Wisconsin is the only state on here that votes to the right compared to the rest of the states that I have left blank. And so Donald Trump would already be approaching victory with the huge margins in the Sun Belt, which I find very peculiar. And so that is it for this video, guys. This is the electoral map if Donald Trump were to win, all these demographics by this amount, and if Biden were to be winning them by this amount. And I also included, third party candidate support. And that does kind of make the margins a little bit wonky. And they do combine for about 16. I expect Stein to maybe get 2. Cornell probably gets around 2. And then basically RFK would end up taking the rest. So around 12%. And this seems around right. Biden's approval rating is basically at 40 point something. It's like 40.3. Trump is sitting at 43.1%. So this national popular vote seems within the realm of possibility as of right now. And so if you guys did enjoy the video, please make sure to go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel, make sure to follow the Twitter and join the Discord in the description down below. And I will see you guys very, very soon.